Jacqueline Jimenez. Most of the time when we start the show, I'm sharing a story that I've covered or an event that I've attended, or even I'm introducing you to business owners or organizations that are sharing their story. But really, those are the results of what the media does. But everything that I share with you on Newsworthy Stories, there is a strategy behind it. And so today I want to talk more about that strategy and how it relates to Newsworthy Stories. Media coverage for television and social media. When people think of television news coverage, they think only of television. But today, with the power that we have through social media, news coverage for social media, I'm finding, is just as impactful. Uh, I always recommend both, right? If you know me, I'm trying to get, if there's a story there, I'm going to try and get you news coverage as well on television. But I'm also going to try and tell a story on social media because on social media, we're not bound by commercials. Television news is bound by commercials because that's what pays the bills. I always tell people that newsrooms often operate more like nonprofits because nonprofits, are run by sponsors, donors, and news is run by commercials. There's no product other than the story, and the stories don't sell, if you will. You can't sell that story to somebody and say, okay, you can buy this story, right? The only thing that they do is really spend money at the end of the day. And so what they do is rely on these commercials so they can tell their story. And that is so incredibly important because if you understand that what news can do and what they can't do, then you can share your story differently. So often people send stories or their press releases to the newsroom, but they sound like commercials. And so if you do that, then it's a conflict of interest for news because news pays the bills. So if I'm doing a story about you and I'm telling your story for free, then why would an advertiser come behind me and want to pay to share their commercial? And so one of the things that I do in media strategy is I offer workshops and master classes. And those workshops and master classes are based on my handbook, which is called How to Get Television News Coverage. It's easier than you might think. I actually wrote it in 2019. And it's funny now, okay, because everything that I wrote in this book uh, has now come to fruition. The other day, I was on a flight, and actually, when I had finished writing it in 2019, and I was having people read it, and I was like trying to get my husband to read it. I was like, "Could you just stop for a second and read this?" So tell me what you think, because he's really good at telling exactly what he thinks. He's not gonna just sugarcoat it for you, right? So I knew if he told me the truth, then I would know exactly what I needed to do. And so he read it on a flight, and it was like an hour flight. And so this recently, I decided to reread it. And I have to tell you, I was happy. I was like, everything in this book, I was like, man, everything in this book has come to fruition. And it was designed to do that because before COVID, I had planned to just do media strategy and freelance because I've always been a freelance. I've always been a news producer, worked in a newsroom over 22 years, but I've also always been a freelance producer. And what that means is I would work with production companies and I would produce documentaries, commercials, and corporate videos. So now when I'm sharing stories, I tend to tell it like a news story, but also highlight it like a corporate video. So that's different from what news can offer you because news isn't going to promote you the same way that I can because I'm not bound by commercials. We're not bound by the rules. We can tell the whole story. We can share your website. We can share your messaging, as well as the story. And so, those are some of the benefits of having a news story for social media as well as having one for television, because both I have found, which I didn't know when I first wrote the book, right? When I first wrote my book, I didn't know the impact it was going to have because I didn't really plan on having news stories for social media. That was not in my plan before COVID. That kind of was born out of COVID because I wanted to help businesses. We were in the shutdown, and I heard about, businesses that, especially ones that had just opened up in COVID. And I thought, gosh, um, nobody knows they're there. And then some of them were essential businesses. And so I ended up starting to produce news stories for them really for free, just to get the word out about what they were doing. And what we found was it was nonstop business. And the reason why is because of how people were treating my news stories. They treat my news stories just like they came from the networks, and rightly so. I'm a network news producer. Uh, I treat my stories the same way. I have to verify the story. I have to know that it's true because, especially when I realized people were treating my stories like that, I knew that they were believing what I was sharing. And so I couldn't just be a media production company where you could just pay me to tell your story. I have to verify it. I have to know that it's real. And so that was something that really stood out to me when I started to understand that this power on social media and on, obviously, local news media, your international news media, national news media. I've always known it in television. That's why they say the power of the media, because it is powerful, hands down, right? The power of the media is, I can't even explain it. But what I'm finding on social media is that you get to own the messaging and still bring awareness, still create loyalty, still have credibility. Because one thing is, when anytime news does a story about you, it automatically gives you credibility. um, People still believe, if the news media covers you, they expect news to verify that information. And so newsworthy stories is no different in that regard, because it's ingrained in me. I can't just go tell a story about something, which is also why certain stories, I probably won't cover. If I can't verify it, or it's something that's medical and I don't know for sure that it is working, or if you don't have testimonials behind it and people to tell me that what they've done is working, I can't do that story. And news isn't either. News is not going to cover a story that they cannot verify, which is what I share with people. The reason why you see so many stories about murders, crime, accidents, weather, politics, those stories are easy to verify. The police department is verifying most of those, right? But whether we can see politics, they're in your face. And so those are some of the things that the importance behind what Newsworthy Stories does. I don't just produce stories, I don't just have a show, but it's the media strategy. I cannot stress the workshops and master classes that I hold. And just recently, I've been trying to really exercise that information to your brain, the media strategy behind it. There is a strategy. As a producer, I used to tell people, I still tell people in my workshops, it's a reporter's job, primary job, to tell the story, but a producer's primary job to sell the story. Like I said, our only product in news is the story. So producers, we have to sell it from the top of that show to the bottom. And so story placement, where we would place that story to keep our viewers watching, was essential. Essential. And so that's why you have headlines, you have teases, and then even that story, a lot of times you see at the end that we tease all the way through. It's that story, that human interest story, right? That keeps you there going, oh, I want to see what's going to happen with that story. And often it's a happy story or something that's going to, you know, pique your curiosity or something you've never seen before. And these are the strategies that I teach in my workshops and master classes. How to keep people engaged uh, in your newsroom, because as a business owner, you are the newsroom and social media as an audience. And so, how are you going to keep your business engaged? How are you going to keep your audience engaged? And it's not this, constant ba 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 ba. To me, does it? It's the story. It's the story behind what you post. It's turning on your camera, not just for still shots, which are very effective. People love to look at pictures, their photo albums. That's why Facebook is so popular, and all these other platforms where you watch stories or watch pictures. TikTok, simplest things. People like to see people doing other. They're very curious. They only have their own lives. They want to see what everyone else is doing. It's not complicated. And what you're doing every day is actually very interesting to someone else. And so, one of the things I like to do in my workshops is share those things. Um, I wanted to share some of the workshops, and let me tell you what I have. So, if you go to Eventbrite, you are going to see that I have two types. I have a workshop, which is an introductory workshop. And it really breaks down a little something of what I'm kind of sharing with you now, but more detail, right? And also because we're one on one, we can talk about your industry specifically. So I'm going to give you ideas on where to begin. You might think, there's no story about me. Well, what is the purpose behind your business? That's the number one selling story right now, because people are buying into your purpose and the person before they buy into that product. And so being able to share that story and your product and your service and your purpose and the awareness, that's where that media strategy comes in. How do I share this and keep people engaged? How can I do this? And I have to tell you, I always tell people, all right, this thing right here, your telephone, your cell phone, is your key. Um, it's your key. We've been getting news coverage with our phones. With our phones. That's why you'll see stories from my clients from all over, because I'm not going with them because they have their cell phones. And so I teach them. I have a very popular master class that teaches people how to shoot with your phones for not only social media, but for television. Because if you can shoot that story in a way that news can use it, and you send it with your press release, you're going to have a better chance of getting coverage. And that is essential for a small business or medium size or a corporation for that matter. But especially for the small and mid-sized businesses or nonprofit. And I know the nonprofit world. And as you can see here at the bottom, right? Nonprofits. I had nonprofits in mind when I wrote this handbook. I had churches in mind, organizations, law enforcement agencies, medical agencies, schools, really. Why did I choose those? Because there are news stories in those organizations on a daily basis, every day. But not only that, they're in your business community. And you have to work to turn that story, that angle around so that it doesn't sound like a commercial. And that's where Newsworthy Stories helps. That's where I help the most, is taking that, even though it is business, it's something about your business or the way you're impacting the community, but it needs to be something that's not a commercial in order for news to cover it. And even for people, because if they think that they're just watching a commercial, they're not likely to watch it. But if there's a story in it, then they're more likely to tune in, but also the story helps them remember. And so through my introductory workshop, I help people understand what they should cover, what's important in their business, and to how to start looking at what they should shoot when they go to an event, even the simplest things, how to become an expert in a news story. Man, you'd be surprised on how to become an expert in a news story. And so you don't even have to own a business. You could just be an expert in what you do. You could be an executive in your company. And how profitable would that be for your company if news is looking to you to share your expertise? I can go on and on about the need, but there's a couple things in particular. When I say that you can use your phones to create a story, you'd be surprised how many stories I've created just using my phone and my iPad. And I'm going to share, and I did one the other day as I was actually at the event, attending the event, and I was actually going there to volunteer, but I can't help it. If I see a story happening, I'm going to shoot it. And that's what happened when I went to the Forbes BLK Summit. The last day of the summit was a day of service. And because, one, I love to serve, right? But when I got there and I saw what was happening, that now all of these professionals from across the country had come together, and now they were going to serve and help. This is one of the number one ways to impact the community as a business, become a business leader, create loyalty, and gain television news coverage, is by helping, is by collaboration, is coming together with other business owners to help someone else in the community. And that's why this story about Operation Hope was like, it wasn't just a story about what they were doing, which was incredible, as you can hear from the sound bites. It really helped this organization. But how will people who see the people in the story view those people? They will see them differently. Like, they could have went home. A lot of people went home after the first part of that summit was over. The speakers were done speaking. This wasn't mandatory. It was a volunteer. So now you start to look at the people involved differently because they're volunteering. They're taking time from business to help out a nonprofit, which, by the way, all nonprofits are holding this country together and really the world. If you want to find a story or be a part of the story, connect with a nonprofit in your community. I think I even mentioned it in my handbook. In the 2 mile radius from where you work or you serve, that's the area, you know, you should reach out to. Look for nonprofits in those areas. Look for ways to serve or connect or collaborate with one another and do something for someone else. Difference makers. Those stories are always winning. People love to watch people help others. That's why when there's a disaster and everyone comes together, right? During a disaster, we love to see those pictures. We love to see humanity, right? We'd be reminded that people care because we see so many of the other depictions. So, Newsworthy Stories is about helping identify the stories in your business giving you media strategy on how to tell multiple stories, not just one. If you have an event, you'd be surprised how many stories that you should probably share. Build up that anticipation, for your audience, getting them excited about your event before the event. Don't just plan on opening day, plan on stories leading up to opening day. Build that anticipation so that when this thing happens, people are going to be so interested. They're going to they want a front row seat, right? So that's one of the main things I do. I help with you with media strategy, the strategy behind the story, help you decide what people will watch, because I've been doing it for over 30 years. And you can kind of see my track record. My track record is pretty easy because my clients, you'll see multiple stories from my clients. Okay. They wouldn't keep asking me to do multiple stories about them if it wasn't working. What it does is it opens doors. People they would never reach are being reached. And they call me and say, hey, can you introduce me to such and such and such? And I'm like, sure. Or they call them directly, which is also the key point, right? But I love bringing these people together. Now I'm bringing my clients together to do things. It's just a beautiful thing. But visibility is so key right now. Content creation is essential. You must know how to do it. And it's not hard. I'm not a videographer. I'm a producer. But I really, after these past 3 years through COVID, I'm kind of becoming one, right? So every month, because content creation is so important, I have a masterclass that every month I do 1 week of it, of the same masterclass, because it's that important. People need to know how to use their phones effectively and create content that their marketing departments can go and market it. Okay. And you may be saying, I'm the marketing department. Well, that's fine. But at least you'll have great content to market. At least you'll have great content to advertise or to boost posts on social media. It's having that engaging content that keeps people coming back to see what you're posting. And that's the key, is to, one, keep yourself in the news, right? And I tell you how to do that in my workshops and master classes. I tell you how to keep yourself on the top of that feed so that different audiences will see you, just like news does. News has the same show at 5, 5:30, 6, 4, now noon, whatever. They're telling most of the time, the same stories, right? Some of the shows are a little different, but they're just trying to catch you at the time that you're watching. That's your mindset when you're posting on social media. Don't just post it once and go, oh, I don't want to bother people. Most of the people on your feed haven't watched it. They're working. Sometimes they take a break at lunch. Sometimes they take a break at 10. Sometimes they're up early and they're scrolling at 7, 6, midnight, 1 o'clock. Everybody's on their own different schedule. And so don't be afraid to share your post or your story often. I can keep going, right? But every once in a while, it's just good to just talk about media and television and social media because it's so impactful, especially now. Own your own messaging. Make an appointment with me. Let's get going and tell your story. Thanks for watching Newsworthy Stories with Jacqueline Jimenez.
There's an African proverb that resonates with the spirit of what we're going to do. And it states that the things that you do for yourself are gone when you are gone, but the things that you do for others will remain your legacy.
We partnered with Atlanta Public Schools, and we were able to have a child savings account program to which we're pouring $50 into each child's savings account from kindergarten to senior year. 3 years ago, And at this time, we have over 7,100 kids that have now have child savings accounts. We have over $360,000.
So Operation Hope is hosting Forbes BLK today for their day of service. They just finished their summit over the last 2 days, and they're helping us to pack our educational kits for our financial literacy program that will be rolled out in several schools in the city of Atlanta.
Children are your biggest investment because you are spending time and energy into an individual to become a young, productive citizen in today's society. And that's what we do here at Operation Hope. We educate, but we definitely invest in our children. We teach you about the importance of saving money. We teach you about the importance of learning about how we can establish good credit and lowering that debt. So that's what our coaches are here to be a part of your journey as a family member and at the dinner table.
This is literally days and days of manpower that we just don't have. It would have taken a lot of time from our team to make this happen. That's 28 bins. There's roughly 50 items that go in each bin. And then we have to label, we have to categorize, we have to sort. And this is just a huge time saver, so we are able to continue programming at the Boys and Girls Club right now, where we are doing the same program we will be doing at APS this fall.
Why did you feel you wanted to be a part of this?
I came here today to make connections and also build more opportunities for the org that I'm already a part of, as well as gain some insight in diversity, equity, and inclusion work that I do at my schools, as well as for the organization that I work.
And what did you discover this weekend?
I discovered some powerful insight from wealthy business owners, as well as powerful Black entrepreneurs and influencers. The person who had the most impact on me during the summit was Jacqueline Jimenez. She gave me very good advice when it came to networking, not to be afraid, but to just kind of approach people and make those connections. I learned today that the worst thing you can do is be afraid, so the best thing you can do is take advantage of those opportunities and pursue them. And a saying that has kind of stuck with me throughout this summit is that if you hang out in a bar long enough, eventually you're going to start drinking. And yeah, that sounds inherently negative. However, in a positive light, if you hang out in the right place long enough, eventually you're going to start doing the right thing and meeting the right people.